same old bite. Talk that trash down at the store, left folks staring at the floor. Then they caught him being mean, spitting hate in public scenes. He hit the road, took flight real fast, chased that mess down south at last. Down where the palmettos sway, he found a place to go and stay. Slammed that door, he lost the plot. Now everybody knows the spot. Florida man, the Proctor rain. Florida man, in a frying pan. Florida man, what a shame. Florida man, same old name. Florida man, Florida man, Florida man. Moss hung low on the chain link fence. He wore that shame like common sense. Told his story bent and thin, but the truth kept dragging him in. Down where the gators grin, he couldn't outrun what lived within. Every word he threw at night came back loud in the morning light. Florida man, Proctor rain. Florida man, in a frying pan. Florida man, what a shame. Florida man, same old name. Florida man, Florida man, Florida man. Let him sink in that muddy heat with his own cold heart and his own bad speech. The whole wide state heard the joke when pride got broke in the nightcloud smoke. Florida man, Proctor rain. Florida man, in a frying pan. Florida man, what a shame. Florida man, same old name. Florida man, Florida man, Florida man. Oh, Florida man, say it clear. Florida man, we don't need hate here. Florida man. Woo!
Hey, folks. Oh, it is Saturday. It's only Saturday once a week, which is better than Mondays, which is every week. Didn't plan to do a stream, but then, well, yesterday, in the Miles King case, here she goes. Miles King's defense attorney, Scarpaccio, and presents this second supplemental motion to dismiss. And in it, I thought it can't be much worse from Proctor than what we already seen and heard. As it turns out, the depth of former trooper Michael Proctor's depravity is a bottomless pit. I don't know if this stream will survive, honestly, but it has to be shown, because even today there are people defending Proctor after this came out. There are still people defending Proctor. And the only reason I can see is that they agree with him. That I have to assume the people who still defend Trooper Proctor does it because they are the same as Proctor. I'm going to assume that, because there's no other reason to keep going in that route. It's insane. Now, most have just gone silent, but there are still people out there And we knew he was a scumbag, racist scumbag with words. I told you guys, I have heard similar before, but that's a long time ago, and it was from active neo-Nazis. That's the only type of people I've ever heard this type of speech from. So let's just say there's no coming out, there's no way out for him, Good, Sergeant Good, other officers, friends and family of the Proctors, which includes the Alberts and McCabe's. That it's, yeah, you can only put that many exclamation marks after something you say, and then it just becomes, yeah, add 4 more. Add 4 more. And yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, so we get past the 8-minute mark. Now you mean, yeah, the 7-second, no cursing, 8-minute, then somewhat safer. But what we are going to go through isn't safe. If you had to go away from, remember last time, about a week ago, with the Proctor's text with and with Good, I saw people just turning away, saying, I can't listen to it anymore. This is your chance of just walking away. Because this isn't going to be a fun stream. I will do my best to add snark when needed. Maybe an inappropriate joke here and there, or an appropriate joke here and there. But at the core, this is as bad as I've ever heard anything being said. Maybe even a bit worse. And folks, I've told you this. The part of Sweden I grew up in was the center of the Swedish Nazi movement. I went to school with kids and grandkids to active World War II Nazis. And this is as bad, maybe in some even worse. So here's your chance. But it needs to be shown. I don't know if I can read some of this, but I can show. So, okay, we're almost 10 minutes in. Let's go. Let's go. Filed under seal, but no longer sealed. 6/11/26, vacated by agreement. Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Commonwealth versus Miles King. Defendant's second supplemental motion to dismiss. On August 14th, 2025, King filed his supplemental motion to dismiss for egregious government misconduct, attachment A, which discussed the Commonwealth's discovery disclosures and violations up until notice of discovery 24 on August 6, 2025. Since the August 14th, 2025 filing, the Commonwealth has made 7 additional discovery disclosures, including the October 30th, 2025 first Proctor phone disclosure and the November 20th, 2025 second Proctor phone disclosure. Do your best to... thank you, Justin Wright. No, thank you so much. Do your best to use pseudonyms and do not put the slurs on screen. Melanie Little stream was demonetized just for what was on screen. Oh, yeah, I will do my best. And thank you so much for the super. Thank you. These recent disclosures demonstrate egregious misconduct of the part of the Commonwealth. Proctor's texts and photographs reveal such deep-seated and atrocious racial animosity that infected the entire investigation in violation of King's rights under the 6th and 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution and Article 12 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, such that dismissal is required. And they are citing Commonwealth v. Lewis, Commonwealth v. Montego, Commonwealth v. Dew, Ellis v. Harrison, Commonwealth v. Badgett. So there's plenty of case law in this. Factual background. King incorporates the arguments in his original motion to dismiss, filed May 28th, 2025, and his first supplemental motion to dismiss, filed August 14th, 2025. The Proctor materials disclosed on October 30th and November 20th, 2025, do not stand alone. They constitute another layer in the cumulative pattern of egregious government misconduct already pleaded in King's first supplemental motion to dismiss, and they must be evaluated together with the discovery violations, withheld exculpatory evidence, and grand jury irregularities documented there. See Kyles v. Whitley and Wary v. Kane. Procedural history. On April 14th, 2025, King filed defendant supplemental motion for discovery relating to ex-MSB trooper Michael Proctor and his associates and supervisors. King specifically requested Proctor's personal cell phone from the dates of this indictment to his firing. Motion at 1. On April 24th, 2025, King filed a motion to preserve and produce Proctor's cell phone records, including Proctor's personal phone. That same day, the court ordered the preservation of Trooper Proctor's personal and work phones. On June 17th, 2025, Judge Doolin allowed King's motion to preserve and produce cell phone records for Proctor's personal cell phone. Quote, as to the communications, including the content, call durations, times and numbers involved on former State Trooper Michael Proctor's personal cell phone, from the date of the charged murder, July 10th, 2021, to the date of the indictment, November 19th, 2021, highlighted here, the Commonwealth shall promptly produce any other data from Proctor's personal cell phone that constitutes investigative material or is favorable to the defense within the meaning of Mass R. Crim P. 14. Oh, Andy. Hey, Andy. Thank you, Nick. Your personal and European perspective is a value many US citizens need. Your lived experience is really appreciated. Thank you so much, Andy. And Andy, we need to get together and talk more regarding the Delphi case and stuff. We need to talk, or just hang out. Either way. Let's see. Decision at 6, emphasis added. On July 25th, 2025, Proctor filed a third-party Michael Proctor's motion for clarification of court's memorandum and order dated June 17th, and for a protective order. On August 13th, 2025, this court issued an order clarifying order, examination of former State Trooper Michael Proctor's cell phone. The court ordered, by August 25th, Proctor shall provide his personal cell phone to the Commonwealth and disclosed the carriers for his personal cell phone to the Commonwealth as required at page 7 of the initial order. The court further ordered that the Commonwealth shall extract a full digital copy of all the data on the cell phone, maintain a copy, shall provide a copy of the extraction to Proctor's counsel, and shall return the cell phone to Proctor. So, this is as clear as you can get with the what they shall do. Not may, not if it's not inconvenient, it's fucking do it. On October 16th, the Commonwealth filed a notice of discoverable information under 14b2 and motion for additional time to complete review of former state police troopers' cell phone. On October 30th, 2025, the Commonwealth disclosed the first batch of Proctor's personal phone materials to King. This disclosure contains some of the most heinous, racist, and disturbing conversation that counsel has seen in over 30 years of practice as a criminal defense attorney. On November 20th, the Commonwealth disclosed the second batch of Proctor's personal cell phone material to King. This disclosure contained both disturbing text messages and racist photographs that no person, never mind a sworn officer of the law, should generate, share, and celebrate. The disclosed text and photographs. Examples of the text messages sent by Proctor to the group chat include I'm going to do this. Yeah. This double standard reverse racism that N-words get away with absolutely infuriates me. Next quote. Detroit should be destroyed along with places like Flint, Michigan. They are breeding ground for N-words to run wild. Quote. 9 whitey people and 3 old school N-word on the jury. Quote. This is Proctor. Quote, I was planning on tying an N-word up and dragging him from my bumper through the streets of Randolph. End quote. Oh, Squid. Hey, Squid, thank you. Says, thank you for sticking up for the little guy against the legal version of Voldemort. You're welcome. You're welcome. That was last night's stream, by the way. And Justin Wright says, yeah, it's really bad. Oh, yeah. And oh, wait. There's more. Quote, you see an N-word, just kill it. Now, the N-word here is really bad. What I see here is his use of the word it. That tells me that Proctor doesn't even see black people, brown people as even human beings. This is what puts him on the Schnazi level. And oh wait, there's more. Quote, ha ha ha, Cookie, let's get some horses and white sheets and burn a cross in the arboretum. Next one, quote, hope she gets raped in the behind by a gang of 300-pound N-words. End quote. Quote, "Hey N-word, go fetch Sir Bear his wings and pizza," end quote. Quote, "Haha, I am up. Just got some N-word pulled over who is unlicensed and debating arresting or giving him a summons," end quote. Yeah, this is in a group chat, which I guess is one of the group chats we already heard of, including friends, family, and other officers. Quote, "I will never see a movie anywhere else. No N-words, obnoxious kids, and ample room to spread out and float some AI biscuits." End quote. Quote, "Ha ha ha ha. Michael, we could use them N-words as dartboards." Which of the Michaels is he talking about? Hey, Karate Cat Mom, thank you for interrupting here. Says, "Good morning, nip funds for the Viking Cat." Yeah, I will make sure Mr. Jingles gets one. Are you going to watch World Cup tomorrow? Oh, yes, I am. Sweden has its opening game tomorrow. Now, your time, I don't know what it starts US time. It's 4 a.m. here when that match starts. And, well, usually I'm up at 4:15, but I suppose I have to go up a bit earlier tomorrow. Quote, "It should be punch an N-word in Canton today out of retribution. Any shine you see, blast it in the face." End quote. Quote, "Well, N-words smell regardless." And here is a footnote. King is also filing a USB drive under seal with the discovery provided by the Commonwealth about Proctors' phone. In the text, the full N-word is used. We have chosen to modify it for this filing. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's bad enough. But, oh, wait. There's more. Quote, "The first phone call that kid will make when a fellow N-word broke into his house or car is to the cops." End quote. Quote, "Pendy, I haven't shot anyone, but I did pull an N-word over today for tossing a cigarette out the window." End quote. Quote, "Eat a dick, Ghana. Let's enslave those N-words. My car needs a cleaning." End quote. Quote, "Oh great, now the N-words have a straight pipeline to Canton." End quote. I assume that is about all of a sudden there are black cops and non-white people on the Canton board. Quote, "Which is bullshit, though, that these N-word animals resort to that." End quote. Quote, "I'd rather a COON. I'd just shoot the N-word or scare him off by telling him he has to work." End quote. Quote, "Kenner." Now that's a name. High school friend? Something? "Kenner, these N-words are holding signs for you at the All-Star game." End quote. Oh, wait, there's more. Example of text that Proctor received from other members of the WhatsApp group include Yeah, we just went through what he sent in. Now let's listen what came back. A werewolf, thank you so much. All the cases Proctor was involved with should be reviewed. Yeah, all of them, including but not limited, all the ones that good. Folks, this should end up with a review of all the cases from the time he entered the force until he got fired, but also his fellow officers who knew this and agreed with his opinions. So, in return, by other members of this group chat, including friends, family, and other police officers, is, quote, ape economics, a financial system run by N-words, by which a prosperous nation is converted into a cesspool of poverty and misery. This is from Kevin Foley, apparently, or whatever. Quote, I want to police the black neighborhoods. Honestly, let them do it themselves, end quote. This is from Fargo. In response to the above, Kevin Foley stated, quote, let them kill each other, end quote. Quote, my question, what country treats blacks as well as America? All of them? Some even better, or even much better? Continuing the quote, what country offers them a better quality of life? It's called being treated equal. It's not that hard. What Proctor and people like Proctor, because of the history, and we see here through Proctor and other police officers and his friends that some minorities needs extra protection until we reach, okay, now we don't need to. And this is why it's still needed. Because of people like Proctor. Alive, this type of people are still, and this I don't think is unique for Canton Mass. It's the same type that in and around Delphi, Indiana. The case of the Flora 4 girls in Flora, Indiana, a stone throw from Delphi, Indiana. 4 girls, 4 black girls, were burnt to death in an arson. I have the documents. I have the lack of investigation documents. It's clear to me who is the prime suspect. That was late 2016, and not a single arrest have been made. With those 4 girls, that was around 10% of the black population in that county. That county, with the Delphi and Flora and other minor towns, everything but white is a rounding error in the statistics. And nobody in that police or the DA's office, they couldn't care less about 4 dead, burnt to death black girls. I have, if you want to learn about the Flora 4 case, I have a playlist about the Flora 4. And it is heartbreaking. It is absolutely heartbreaking. Oh, okay, let's continue with the quotes from this Snapchat group chat. Quote, even 3-year-old N-words are terrible humans. That's from Fargo. Quote, shoot a spook. Larry Kennedy. Quote, this is why I hate spook, and we should send them all to an island and kill each other. Larry Kennedy. Quote, I hate N-words. Kevin Foley. Quote, Bear, go get the N-word and string him up. What kind of asshole stabbed 2 park rangers? They just want to protect the trees, end quote, from Trendy. I don't know about that case. Quote, rocket N-word. An N-word attached to a rocket who flies around stealing stuff like cars, basketballs, fried chicken, and people's legs, end quote. Quote, N-words will riot no matter what the outcome is, to which Proctor responded, whatever the course of action is, these N-words will riot. Quote, let the sand N-words kill each other, from Fargo. Quote, fight, N-word, and the white don't win, we all jump in, end quote. And then, quote, hashtag die N-word day. But oh wait, there's more. Proctor also had offensive photographs on his phone. A few examples include this one. 2 white children staring at a black child in a cage. This one, a meme says, if it's brown, flush it down, depicting a black child in a toilet. This one, and another one. Okay, now for the time being, we can read again with this on the big picture. And Scarpaccio says, these are only snippets of the derogatory language and offensive photographs that Proctor and his associates used consistently in their group chat from 2013 until 2023. So what we see here, what I just read, are snippets of what was in there. Okay. Proctor's role in King's case. Michael Proctor was the lead investigator in the Miles King case. Proctor was on the scene the day of the homicide occurred on July 10th, 2021. Proctor authored all 6 search warrants in King's case, coordinated video canvases, reviewed video evidence, directed other investigators in King's case to obtain Simmons' property from BMC, and went to BMC himself to try to obtain the property. Even in the discovery documents provided, Proctor is listed as the investigator assigned to the King's case. Isn't it weird that he took these efforts once he learned that a suspect might be black, when he did jack shit in the John O'Keefe death, when the suspect was a fellow officer? Let's see here. How am I? Yeah, I'm yellow. Yeah, which means limited ad revenue. Now, folks, I don't have ads during a live stream. I do put ads in once the live stream is over, one every 20 minutes or so. Which means no ad revenue. But yeah, thank you guys for helping out. Thank you to Andy for becoming a member. Justin, Andy again, Squid, Justin, Karate Cat, and Aware for your supers, because that makes up that makes well up for the lack of ad revenue on this. What? Brother Counsel is running for Norfolk County DA? He announced it at MLC. Don't know how he'll do. They don't take kindly to outsiders. That's his. I did not see that. I don't know how to comment on that. I have to look at it first. All right, let's continue here. Proctor interviewed many witnesses in the case, including Kristen Lacasse, firefighter Brian Feeney, paramedic Ryan Mitchell, Finesse Carter, of Avon Dorset, Husnain Akram, Dion Knight, Sherelle McElroy, Michael Johnson. On September 2nd, 2021, Proctor received a picture from Kevin Foley in his WhatsApp that said, quote, "Going from Cam Newton to Mac Jones is like driving through Mattapan Square and entering Milton." To which Proctor responded, quote, "That's great and accurate." I have no idea the reference there. Okay, people in the chat seems to believe that the Brother Council was it was a joke. I have to see it to comment on it. Well, thank you, Mr. Coop, for your $5 super, saying thank you for what you do, enjoying the content. Thank you, thank you so much. I'm not an. Now we are past the part I really didn't like reading out loud because it leaves a foul taste. It's no. Ugh. This part, now we can have some fun. Proctor testified at the grand jury in King's case on September 30th, 2021 regarding the investigation, the timeline, interviews he had conducted, and evidence he had reviewed. Proctor provided reports and updates to ADA Lally and coordinated witness materials from the grand jury. Proctor worked with Milton PD on joint interviews and follow-up communications with witnesses. In sum, Proctor had a hand in almost every aspect of the investigation and in formulating the case against King. As such, this entire investigation is flawed. Argument. This court has the power to dismiss King's case. They are quoting Commonwealth v. Levin, Commonwealth versus Montegodo, Commonwealth v. Ware. In the case of first impression in this Commonwealth, King moves to dismiss the charges against him on the basis that the lead investigator in his case held views of fundamentally racist and opposed to him as a black man, that the entire investigation was tainted by the lead investigator's bias, and that no action save dismissal will be enough to clear that taint. In the alternative, King requests that this court dismiss the charges on King based on Proctor's egregious misconduct to, quote, create a climate adverse to repetition of that misconduct that would not otherwise exist. Finally, King requests an evidentiary hearing on King's motion to dismiss to further develop whether Proctor's racial bias was known and or shared by any other member of the prosecution team, and because King has shown an inference of racial bias in Proctor's investigation of King and an abuse of government power in violation of the Equal Protection Clause. Yeah. I would be surprised. I would not be surprised if the DA's office said, "We had no idea." Fuckers. This is what they put in a group chat. This is how Proctor and his colleagues and friends and family says to each other where they feel they are safe. And when he does it in text, imagine what he does when he doesn't write it down, when it's not recorded. These were things he said in the locker rooms, at parties, at weddings. They all knew. They all knew. All right, let's continue. The lead investigator's racism constitutes egregious government misconduct that tainted every aspect of the investigation, such that King can never have a fair trial. Standard for dismissal based on egregious government misconduct. Massachusetts courts have recognized that dismissal of an indictment may be necessary when the government's conduct is so egregious as to prejudice the defendant's right to a fair trial. And they cite a whole bunch of case law here. Proctor is a member of the prosecution team and a lead investigator in this case. Police conduct may be found egregious where it, quote, involves coercion, violence or brutality, persistent exploitation of personal weaknesses, or when it is shocking, outrageous, or clearly intolerable. Again, if the things we saw and heard from Proctor and his friends, again, where I grew up, that part of Sweden was known as the center of the Swedish Nazi movement. I went to school with kids and grandkids of active World War II Nazis. The words we saw here and read are equally bad, some even worse, than what I heard from those people. So if it's not shocking, it's because if somebody says they are not shocked by it, well, not shocked, but outrageous, intolerable. If you can't say shocking, outrageous, or clearly intolerable, who are you hanging around with? All right, let's continue. Quote, in cases alleging egregious government conduct, the focus is not on the propensities and predisposition of a specific defendant, but on whether the police conduct revealed in the particular case falls below standards to which common feelings respond for the proper use of governmental power. Under this approach, the determination of the lawfulness of the government conduct must be made, as it in on all questions involving the legality of law enforcement methods, by the trial judge, not the jury. So this case law says, no judge can say we have to leave it to the jury. No, this has to be a decision by the judge itself. It's a matter of law, not fact. The due process clause protects, quote, certain immutable principles of justice, which inhere in the very idea of free government. Holden v. Hardy, 1898 case. In evaluating outrageous government misconduct, courts have emphasized that these criteria should not be rigidly applied, and the ultimate determination in whether the government's conduct was so shocking, outrageous, and clearly intolerable that due process is offended. US v. Nolan Cooper, 1998. In Monteagudo, the Supreme Judicial Court addressed a defendant's claim that an undercover state trooper had engaged in egregious government misconduct by recruiting him into the drug trade, allegedly supplying money for a pager, directing him to locate a cocaine supplier, and threatening that his, quote, family was going to pay for it, and, quote, if he refused to cooperate, and selling cocaine to the trooper on 3 occasions thereafter. The court held that the question of outrageous government conduct is one of constitutional due process law reserved exclusively for the trial judge, not the jury. The court articulated the threshold that governs the defense. The challenged conduct must be shocking, outrageous, and clearly intolerable. Proctor's conduct is shocking, outrageous, and clearly intolerable. Proctor was the lead investigator in King's case and was involved from the day the homicide occurred. Proctor was on the scene immediately after the homicide. He interviewed witnesses, collected evidence, reviewed video footage, authored all 6 of the search warrants, and testified at the grand jury in King's case. In other words, Proctor had a hand in and guided the entire investigation. He did all of this while holding the beliefs that black people should be, quote, enslaved, that black people are, quote, animals, and that they should be killed. And they are, showing other the same quotes we just went through, so I'm not going to repeat them. Soaked in his racial bias and hatred for black and brown defendants, Proctor investigated King, a black man, while holding the belief that all black people commit crimes, that black and brown people are not human, that they are, quote, N-words, and deserving of punishment no matter the cost. Proctor believed that locking up, quote, N-words made the community at large safer. These racist views infected the entire investigation. This was not a search for the truth. It was a modern-day lynching, in which inflicting pain and securing the confinement of black and brown people, whom Proctor referred to as shines, N-words, poo and poo people, was not just accepted, but celebrated. Any prosecution infected with racial bias and hatred to the degree that Proctor expressed freely and celebrate about to his fellow conspirators is an improper use of a government power in violation of King's rights under the 6th and 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution and Article 12 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights. And they cite a bunch of case law here. In the celebration of killing of black and brown people, reference to black and brown people as objects, quote, it, with the goal of making the white community safer by locking up black and brown people, is not, quote, shocking, outrageous, or clearly intolerable conduct of the type the court outlined in the Montague. Then it begs the question whether anything an officer does would cross that line. And they're quoting the explicit bias here. Bias has many forms and many manifestations. On the face of it, explicit bias is the worst. When explicit intentional bias occur in the justice and legal systems, it is especially alarming as people can be wrongfully convicted, and conversely, guilty people can go free. The texts and photographs sent and received by Michael Proctor on his personal phone can only be described as explicit bias against black and brown people. In King's case, these communications demonstrate Proctor's explicit bias against black people. This is the type of racial bias that the court have categorized as, quote, evil, and that, quote, if left unaddressed, would risk systemic injury to the administration of justice, end quote. from the Commonwealth versus McCallum 2020, citing Pena Rodriguez v. Colorado from 2017. The rationale of Pena Rodriguez applies with equal or greater force to a lead investigator. The Supreme Court in Pena Rodriguez held that the no impeachment rule must yield where a juror has expressed racial animus because race is a, quote, familiar and recurring evil that demands extraordinary procedural protection. If even a single juror's racial bias requires that ordinary rules give way, then a fortiori, the racial bias of a lead investigator, who, unlike a juror, is not constrained by the rules of evidence, who alone determines what evidence is collected, which witnesses are credited, and what facts the prosecution and the jury ever see, must trigger the same departure from ordinary procedural defaults. The Supreme Court reinforced this principle in Buck v. Davis, where it held that the appearance of racial bias in even a single phase of a capital proceeding required relief, observing that, quote, some toxins can be deadly in small doses, end quote, when race is involved. Whereas here, racial bias infected not a single phase, but the foundational investigative phase that produced every warrant, every witness statement, and every fact placed before the grand jury, the structural error framework of Vasquez v. Hillary and Buck requires dismissal without any showing of particularized prejudice. A person who refers to black people as the N-word, as, quote, animals, who all commit crimes, who deserve to be in cages and enslaved, who objectifies them, refers to them as it, and believes they should all die, is not capable of conducting a fair investigation into King's case. Proctor's own words reveals his explicit, intentional bias, and he held those beliefs while he was investigating the King's case. It appears from a review of the evidence that Proctor followed up on uncredited the accounts of white witnesses, while disregarding the account of black witnesses. A further evidentiary hearing is necessary to flesh out this intentional bias and racism. It is very possible that Proctor did this intentionally because of his explicit bias. Even if this court finds that Proctor's action in the King's case were not the result of intentional explicit bias, Proctor was undoubtedly driven by his implicit bias against black people. Implicit, also known as cognitive bias. Cognitive bias is an outcome, a byproduct of people's cognitive architecture and of how the brain processes information. Within the justice and legal systems, cognitive bias have been defined as, quote, the class of effects through which an individual's pre-existing beliefs, expectations, motives, and situational context influence the collection, perception, and interpretation of evidence during the course of a criminal case, end quote. It is from Behavioral Sciences, Biased and Biasing, The Hidden Bias Cascade, and Bias Snowball Effect. And another book. Oh, hi, Eve. Saying here in the UK, the Met Police was found to be institutionally racist since the death of Stephen Lawrence in 1993. They have not recovered the McPherson inquiry and report delivered the judgment. Okay, yeah. There's been some really, really bad things going on in Europe as well. And I'm not saying that Europe is better at this. Sometimes they are even worse. Sometimes they go so far and be that. Now, let's not go into that. That's more into politics. I don't want to do politics. The Massachusetts courts have acknowledged how implicit bias can affect everyone's ability to come to fair conclusions. The courts have published model jury instructions on implicit bias that are read both before and after a jury hears the evidence in a case. Quote, there is near conscious among experts, based on studies of populations, that implicit bias can affect human behavior, including decision making. It's an attachment C. Implicit bias is, and that's redacted. Okay, I have to go here instead. I don't know why this screwed up. All right. Implicit bias is, quote, widespread. Although explicit intentional bias exists, it is not as common and widespread as cognitive bias. Whereas the former is exhibited only by some bad apples who are deliberately and intentionally biased, the latter, cognitive bias, is an ubiquitous phenomenon that impacts everyone due to the top-down nature of human cognition and other aspects of cognitive architecture. It's by a book, I guess. Implicit bias is also harder to detect, as it often occurs without conscious awareness of the quote, the person who is exhibiting the bias, end quote. Dror further explains that bias does not stay confined to a single decision maker. Bias cascades. When a bias introduced into one element of the justice system, contaminates other elements, and bias snowballs when biased decisions feed back into and reinforce one another, growing in power as they propagate through the system. The lead investigator's racial bias is precisely the kind of upstream contamination that cascades through the entire prosecution into search warrants, witness selection and interviewing, evidence collection, grand jury testimony, and the charging decision, and snowballs as each downstream actor relies on the biased work product of the one before. Here, there can be no claim that Proctor's racist views did not interfere with his investigation of this case as either explicit, intentional bias or implicit cognitive bias. To hold the views about black and brown people that Proctor does, and to investigate black and brown communities impartially, is an impossibility. There is no way to separate the taint of Proctor's racist views from the investigation he conducted as the lead investigator in this case. Every decision that Proctor made while investigating the King case was infected by, in some implicit or, in Proctor's case, explicit way, bias against black people. Proctor's actions are, quote, shocking, outrageous, and clearly intolerable, such that King could never have a fair trial where Proctor was the lead investigator. As such, the charges against King should be dismissed. 2. By the way, before we go further, following this stream, there is a fundraising stream starting in about 25 or so minutes. It is the the Mike Maricini mega stream fundraiser over True Crime and Wine Time. It's a 12-hour fundraising stream. I will join there around, I believe, 3 or 4 p.m. 3 or 4 p.m. your time, where the Wheel of Regrets will be. The folks who are before and after, they also auction out items. I'm at the other side of the pond. Sending stuff is hard, so I'm joining in as, yeah, let's go. So, but that starts in half an hour. So I will be sending you guys over there. We will be talking about that case. And Mike Maricini case is he was the first known victim of serial pregnancy scammer Laura Owens. What she did to him 10 years ago continues to this day, where she uses the justice system to harass, intimidate, and abuse him. He has long since moved on. He's got a wife and kid. But she won't stop Laura Owens won't stop. And that she is now trying to refile stuff. She has appealed, which forces Mike Maricini to hire an attorney to combat this. And the last number I heard, this was before she started to appeal things and refiling things. He had over $100,000 in lawyers' fees in costs because she can't leave him alone. So, but you will hear more about that in about 25 minutes when we pop over there. All right, let's continue here with this case. King need not prove prejudice to obtain dismissal. However, King has been prejudiced in any event. King need not prove prejudice where the lead investigator harbors deep-seated racial animus. Where the racial bias of a member of the prosecution team is an overt and unrelenting, as Proctors, no separate showing of prejudice is required. The Supreme Judicial Court's decision in Commonwealth v. Dew establishes that the bigotry of this kind is itself the constitutional injury. The defendant cannot be required to reconstruct after the fact the precise ways in which a deeply racist actor's decision warped the proceedings. Just over 6 years ago, the SJC wrote an open letter to the members of the judiciary and the bar of the Commonwealth, acknowledging the grave and ongoing threat that racism poses to our criminal justice system. This is a letter from the 7 justices of the Supreme Judicial Court to members of the judiciary and the bar June 3rd, 2020. The letter is called to, quote, create in our courtrooms a place where all are truly equal, end quote. Echoes long-standing Supreme Court language that racism is fundamentally at odds with any notion of real justice. Discrimination on the basis of race is a source of injury to the law as an institution, to the community at large, and to the democratic ideal reflected in the processes of our courts. Citing Rose v. Mitchell, who is also quoting Ballard v. U.S. Racial discrimination, quote, not only violates our Constitution and the laws enacted under it, but is at war with our basic concepts of a democratic society and a representative government. Smith v. Texas. It is hardly surprising, therefore, to find a myriad of cases in which racism has been at the root of structural error. Vasquez v. Hillary, Commonwealth v. Van Long, Batson v. Kentucky, Commonwealth v. Source. The SJC has repeatedly confirmed that racial prejudice is so antithetical to the integrity of the criminal legal system that even the possibility of racist motives can constitute structural error. Commonwealth versus Ortega, Commonwealth v. Robertson, Commonwealth v. Jones. Based on Proctor's own texts, there is no doubt that Proctor was racially prejudiced. We know of his bias and bigotry as a result of his repeated declaration of hatred against black people and celebrates the very idea of killing and enslaving black and brown people. Hello, Mr. Jingles. Hello. Good to have you here. Good to have you. Hey, Mr. Jingles. I got a super that told me to get you a treat. Hold on, folks, while I go get Mr. Jingles a treat here. Hold on. So, a big picture so you can see it. Hello. And he's off. Oh. All right. So, you paid for it. Mr. Genius got the treat. Let's see here. Continuing. In Commonwealth v. Dew, the court held that counsel's bigotry against persons of the defendant's faith and race, which manifested during counsel's representation of the defendant, deprived the defendant of his right to a fair trial. In Dew, the court found that the defendant had, quote, shown a panel post reflecting the intensity of defense counsel's bias, coupled with the record that defense counsel was unable to divorce his animus from his conduct as defense counsel. E.D. Ellis v. Harrington. Quote, although we cannot know with certainty whether defense counsel's actions or inactions during the course of the representation were motivated by anything other than the defendant's best interests, on the record before us, we cannot credibly assume that defense counsel's representation was not affected by his virulent anti-Muslim and racist views. Importantly, we cannot know whether an attorney who did not share the animus that defense counsels harbored for persons of Muslim faith and black persons would have negotiated a better plea agreement. Nor can we know whether defense counsel's other actions were unaffected by his views regarding black and Muslim individuals. Whereas the record shows was the case here, counsel harbors a deep-seated animus for persons of the defendant's race or religion, we cannot presume zealous advocacy. Nor can we ask the defendant to prove how his counsel's bigotry might have affected the plea deal or otherwise impaired their representation, especially in the view of the record that defense counsel's bias reared its head in connection with his treatment of the defendant. The court further stated that defense counsel did not leave his deep-seated bigotry at the courthouse door. Our confidence that the defendant was afforded a constitutionally fair process is necessarily undermined. Citing Ellis v. Harrington, the court held that, quote, no additional showing of prejudice is required, and vacated the defendant's convictions and remanded for a new trial. As Justice Cipher stated in her concurrence, quote, public confidence in the integrity of the criminal justice system is essential to its ability to function. We must be aware of and concerned with the confidence of not just this defendant and not just all black and Muslim clients represented by defense counsel, but rather all black persons and members of the Muslim faith in our community, not simply those that have come into contact with the criminal justice system. While the holding in Dew focused on defense counsel, the analytical framework that bigotry creates an actual conflict of interest that cannot be cured by post hoc speculation about its effects translates in this case of first impression to Proctor as the lead investigator. In Commonwealth versus Rodriguez, the Supreme Justice expanded the long racial protection to non-traffic investigatory stops, which should extend to the investigations themselves. And Commonwealth v. Badgett extended Dew to include relief for defendants where racist social media posts postdated the attorney's representation of the defendant. The court reasoned that intense racism and bigotry of the kind shown does not develop overnight, and that overt racist statements during the representation are not required to constitute an actual conflict. Badgett's reasoning is particularly forceful here because King is not asking the court to draw an inference of contemporaneous bias from later in-time conduct. The disclosed Proctor material spanned 2013 to 2023, a continuous, unbroken record of explicit racial animus that encompasses, rather than postdates, the entire investigation of King in 2021. Proctor was actively exchanging racist messages while investigating King. On September 2nd, 2021, between the homicide and his grand jury testimony, Proctor received a message from a fellow group chat member that, quote, going from Cam Newton to Mac Jones is like driving through Mattapan Square and entering Milton, to which Proctor responded, that's great and accurate. If post-dated racist conduct supports the Badgett inference, contemporaneous racist conduct establishes the conflict directly. Here, there is no question that Proctor's communications crossed the line from defensible political positions to expressions of extreme racism, at times directed toward defendants he was investigating. Thus, there is no question that Proctor had a conflict of interest, which would render any investigation into King, a black man, quote, fundamentally unfair and its result unreliable. In a rare case like this, where the primary investigating officer's racial bias is so blatant, failing to provide a remedy is pernicious not only because it deprives King of rights secured by the 6th and 14th Amendment to the US Constitution and Article 12 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, but also because it systematically infects and poisons public confidence in the judicial proceeding, injuring the law as an institution and the community at large. Buck v. Davis, Ramos v. Louisiana. Quote, unfairness and racial bias can undermine confidence in and respect for the criminal justice system. When confronted with such clear discrimination, putting the burden on the accused to prove prejudice sends the unmistakable message that the criminal legal system tolerates bias and signals that ours is a system of justice for some rather than justice for all. Any claim by Proctor that he no longer holds these racist beliefs or that those beliefs did not interfere with the investigation in the King case must be discounted. Proctor was sending and receiving racist messages while he was investigating the King's case. On September 2nd, while actively investigating King, Proctor received a picture from Kevin Foley in his WhatsApp that said, blah, 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 that we already gone through. In any event, King has suffered actual prejudice. Hey, GG, first and best GG, saying, I don't know anything about King's case, but just imagine the worst criminal, and now he will go free because of Proctor and his group. Yeah. The little I know about the King case, it's really bad. But then again, all we have is Proctor's investigative methods. How much of that can we actually trust? I would say none of it. Yeah, the feds got King. Yeah, feds got King, but it's still based on Proctor's investigation. Hi, Inspire. So, member for 13 months. Hard to catch a live being in Australia. Yeah, I know. Proctor's racist views infected the investigation's most basic credibility judgment. After reviewing these messages and pictures and coming to understand the full extent of Proctor's hatred of black and brown people, statements and omissions made by Proctor in King's case, a black man's case, now take on a more sinister meaning. Counsel can argue, after reviewing Proctor's personal phone, that if Proctor was giving conflicting statements by a white person and a black person, his racism would cause him to disbelieve the black person every time. For example, in this case, Patrol Officer Henry Coodigan told Proctor that he asked Simmons who shot him, and Simmons responded, Mizzy Cash. Yet, Finesse Carter and Michael Turner, the two witnesses who are noted to have been with the victim in close proximity, rendered aid, did not hear this conversation. And it appears from the discovery that they were not asked about this conversation. In other words, Proctor credited the white officer without even attempting to corroborate or refute that statement using the observations of two black witnesses. While that example is obvious from the circumstances, it is impossible to determine whether there were others, whether Proctor's bias caused him to fail to pursue other leads or avenues of investigation that are now lost and undocumented. King has clearly suffered prejudice at the hands of a lead investigator who thought King and everyone who looked like him was less than human. Every decision Proctor made was filtered through that animus. Moreover, the Commonwealth has informed King that it does not plan to call Proctor at trial. If King calls Proctor, Proctor may invoke the Fifth Amendment. Even if Proctor does not invoke the Fifth, the Commonwealth's decision not to call Proctor would shield Proctor from cross-examination, as he would need to be called by King. The impact would not be the same. Where King is denied a fair trial because of the overt racism of the lead investigator, resistance to relief for King would severely undermine the integrity of the criminal legal system. As the Supreme Justice Court recently recognized, quote, "This must be a time not just of reflection, but of action." Again, quoting from the letter from the 7 justices of the Supreme Judicial Court to members of the judiciary and the bar. An institution cannot be recommitted to the systemic change needed to make equality under the law an enduring reality for all, and at the same time hold an investigator who dehumanizes black persons and every other non-white race and non-Christian religion can adequately and impartially investigate a case with a black defendant. The Commonwealth's election not to call Proctor as a witness compounds the prejudice and converts a fact witness problem into a structural one. The Commonwealth proposes to introduce the fruits of Proctor's racist investigations, his warrants, the witness statements he took, the evidence he collected, the photo arrays he assembled, through other witnesses who relied on Proctor's work, while keeping Proctor himself off the stand. The result is that the Commonwealth gets the benefit of Proctor's biased investigation without ever exposing Proctor to cross-examination by King. That is precisely the kind of structural manipulation of witness availability that violates due process. Yeah, this is what the Commonwealth did in the Karen Read case in the second trial. Refused to call him. Why? Because the current DA's office under DA Morrissey are more interested in convictions than the truth. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is they protect him because they agree with him. Hi, Sluthy. Good to see you. Boy, Texas, coming with a subpoena. Reynolds. If King is forced to call Proctor in order to expose his bias, and Proctor invokes the Fifth, the Commonwealth will have effectively immunized its own racist lead investigator from any meaningful cross-examination, an outcome that confronts King with an impossible choice between foregoing impeachment of the investigation and putting on a witness who will assert privilege. Either way, the right to meaningful confrontation guaranteed by 6th Amendment and Article 12 is hollowed out. Webb v. Texas. Thus, King has suffered irreparable harm, as he will never be able to paint a full picture for the jury about just how racist and biased the lead investigator of his case was. Dismissal is warranted even absent prejudice to create a climate adverse to repetition. Even if this court were to find that King has not established prejudice, this court can still dismiss the indictments because Proctor's conduct was egregious, and dismissing King's case would create a climate adverse to repetition. Commonwealth v. Levin. Dismissal with prejudice is a remedy of last resort. Commonwealth v. Kronk. Dismissal can occur where there is egregious government misconduct in failing to disclose evidence. The defendant is prejudiced by the late disclosure, and the defendant can show irreparable harm to the defendant's ability to obtain a fair trial. Under a second principle, when prosecutorial misconduct is egregious, deliberate, and intentional, or results in a violation of constitutional rights, it may give rise to presumptive prejudice. Quote, the only reason to dismiss criminal charges because of non-prejudicial but egregious police misconduct would be to create a climate adverse to repetition of that misconduct that would not otherwise exist. The texts on Proctor's phone are vile, and Proctor was not the only police officer participating in the WhatsApp group messaging. Even now, the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office continues to protect Proctor and the horrible messages on his phone. The Commonwealth has had access to the text since at least July of 2025 and has failed to take any steps to dismiss the case against King. The message currently being sent is that it is acceptable to be a police officer and to hold beliefs that black people are animals responsible for all crime, and that the Commonwealth will protect people who hold those beliefs, shield them from accountability by refusing to call them as a witness, and seek protection orders to further shield their racism from the public. This court has the power to dismiss the case against King and to send a message that the courts do not tolerate officers that participate in any criminal investigation where the officer believes that black people are less than human and that black people always commit crimes and should be killed and enslaved. King requests that this court dismisses the indictments with prejudice because Proctor's conduct was egregious, and dismissing King's case would create a climate adverse to repetition. Oh. And then, well, we are, let's see here, how many more pages are there? No, not that much. Okay. King is entitled to an evidentiary hearing under the Equal Protection Clause. The equal protection principles of the 14th Amendment prohibits discriminatory application of impartial laws. While some selectivity or discretion must be tolerated in criminal law enforcement, that selectivity is permissible only so long as it is not based on unjustifiable standards such as race, religion, or other arbitrary classification. Selective enforcement occurs when there is discriminatory policing in the investigatory phase of the case. To succeed on a selective enforcement claim, the defendant first has the burden of establishing by motion a reasonable inference that the officer's decision was motivated by race or another protected class. The defendant must produce evidence from which a reasonable person could infer that the officer discriminated on the basis of the defendant's race. The courts have found that discriminatory motivation exists when the challenged enforcement decision was, quote, motivated at least in part by race. To establish a reasonable inference of racist motivation, the defendant must point to specific facts from the totality of the circumstances. If that inference is established, the defendant is entitled to a hearing where the Commonwealth has the burden of rebutting the inference. If the Commonwealth is not able to rebut the racist inference, the evidence derived from the selective enforcement is suppressed. Here, King has established not just an inference of a racist motivation by Proctor, he has included text and photographs from Proctor's phone in this very motion that should lead a reasonable person to infer that Proctor's enforcement decisions are almost always motivated at least in part by race. Proctor's beliefs on race can be summed up in his own text messages, and I won't read them again. These messages come from a person who, at the time of King's case, had sworn to serve and protect his community and faithfully execute the laws of the Commonwealth. While the typical remedy in a long hearing for discriminatory enforcement is suppression, here, with Proctors' egregious racism, the remedy should be dismissal. This is not a case of statistical data showing potential bias in car stops. What King has shown the court is racism from Proctor that cannot be disputed and did not change over time, and therefore a hearing is required. For the Commonwealth to oppose and for this court to deny an evidentiary hearing on these facts would further shield Proctor from accountability for his egregious misconduct, compounding the very harm this motion seeks to remedy. King's motion should be allowed on basic principles of fairness. Although there appear to be no reported cases addressing whether the defendant's due process rights were violated as a result of a racially biased lead investigator, courts have found due process violation on grounds of judicial bias. Toomey v. Ohio, Williams v. Pennsylvania. Racism has also been linked to, or has been the sole basis for, the finding of due process violations. Brown v. Mississippi, Loving v. Virginia, Bolin v. Sharp. For this court to acknowledge the profound impropriety created by Proctor's investigation of King would be no more than recognizing that this case offends those canons of decency and fairness which express the notions of justice of English-speaking peoples, even toward those charged with the most heinous offenses. Because while the constitutional violation in this case appears to be one of first impression, due process requires a judgment, quote, reconciling the needs of both of continuity and in change of a progressive society, end quote. As demonstrated by the facts of King's case, today racial discrimination takes the form more subtle than before, but it's not less real or pernicious. Regardless of King's constitutional claims, common principle may provide even greater protection than either the state or the federal constitution require. Common law principles of fairness have supported a wide range of decisions protecting defendants' rights. See Commonwealth v. Johnson. Suppression of unreliable eyewitness identification absent of any claim of police misconduct. Dismissal of indictment of double jeopardy grounds. Admission of specific acts of violence to support a claim of self-defense. So even if this court were to determine that the prevalence of racism in this case throughout Proctor's investigation was not a violation of King's constitutional rights, common law principles of fairness demand that King's motion to dismiss be allowed. No objective observer could view an investigation in which the lead investigator had such deep-seated racist beliefs as anything approaching fair. Conclusion. For all the foregoing reasons, as well as the reasons stated in King's original motion to dismiss and his first supplemental motion to dismiss, King's request that this court dismiss the charges against him and in any event grant an evidentiary hearing on his motion to dismiss. To deny an evidentiary hearing on these facts would further shield Proctor and the Commonwealth from accountability for his egregious misconduct. Respectfully submitted, Miles King by his attorney, Rosemary Curran Scapiccio. And certificate of notice. And then it's just originals and other things. Folks, as Scapiccio said, those quotes were just snippets. Those images presented here was just snippets. They haven't shown us everything. I believe we are still just scratching the surface of Trooper Proctor's depravity. There will be more if needed. It's almost as if they are telling the courts, find reasons on this so we don't have to do the rest. Because other than this, his Nazi, racist, shit cunt beliefs of Proctors that we have seen, we also know that he liked to collect pictures of nude women, allegedly victims of things. So what we have seen so far, it probably can and will be worse when it comes to other cases. And the only way to know is to keep looking for it. And I do know that now, I spotted it on X yesterday. A bunch of attorneys have asked for a review of cases that Proctor was involved with. So there will be more. There will be more. Folks, that is what I had for you. I'm going to send you over to the Mike Maricini fundraiser. First, thank you to Andy becoming a new member. Thank you to Justin Wright for your $5 super. To Andy for $5 super. Squid, $5 super. Thank you so much. Justin Wright, thank you for your $2 super. Karate Cat Mom, thank you. Yes, Nip Funds for the Viking Cat. Yes, he got treats. He got treats. Thank you so much. A Werewolf, thank you for your $5. Mr. Coop, thank you for your $5. And thank you to Mspire for being a member for 13 months. Thank you so much. And let's check over here. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you to... someone bought a coffee. I have to check if there is a name attached to it. No, someone bought a coffee. Thank you, someone. Thank you so much. That is over at Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you so much. That is very, very nice of you. And yeah, that is what I had for you. I'm going to send you over now. And yeah, from me and Mr. Jingles, thank you. Thank you so much. And remember, folks, hug your family. Unless your family's crap, then screw them and give your love to the people who deserve it. See ya. Bye-bye.